What's up, YouTube? Drummer here. If any of you have seen me posting around on the various groups on Facebook today, you've seen me 15-0 and just most recently 20-0 across the day playing matches. The one here was from about a year and a half ago. I played a single match and lost. You can ignore that one. As of today, I have gone 20-0 playing Suppressor Dragons. Over the course of the day, I'll show you where I started with the deck. And then throughout the day, I've gone through about 3 different builds, sort of moving along to fix consistency things and to get the deck to flow in the direction that I wanted it to. There are a couple different directions you can go. I suppose that can be left to player preference. In the end, I'd like to say the build I've come up with is the best build, and I think 20-0 speaks for itself. But I'm not going to show you guys that build. I would rather you guys figure out how that works on your own by starting where I did, filling in the empty spots in the deck and going from there. So as you can see, I'm currently top 100 in match, having gone 20-0 today. The deck where I started about 13 hours ago looked like this. If Dueling Network will load for me. Alright, the essential framework of the entire deck is to play triples of everything. You have 4 big dragons and 4 mini dragons. 1 of each attribute, Earth, Wind, Fire, and Water. And then your main spells for the deck are Gold Sark and 7-Star Sword. Essentially, every single one of the Suppressor Dragons, or now they've been named Elemental Dragons, they all have the exact same wording and exact same layout of the exact same effects. They start off by saying you can banish 2 other monsters that are that particular dragon's attribute and or dragon type from your hand and or graveyard to special summon this card from your hand or graveyard. So they can special themselves from the hand or graveyard by banishing 2 dragons or monsters that share their attribute or combinations thereof. The second effect that they all have is that during your opponent's end phase, if it had been special summoned, it returns in your hand, which keeps your hand baited to keep effects moving. That's actually a really good thing. The third thing that they all have is the ability to discard themselves and another monster of their attribute to gain an effect. Calderas, for example, the fire one, his effect destroys a card on the field. The water one is a Foolish Burial. The earth one is a monster reborn from your graveyard only. And Tempest is a search your deck for any dragon card. So that's the only difference between them all, is what exactly their pitch themselves plus attribute effect does. The next thing that they all have is if it gets banished, you can add 1 that dragon's attribute type dragon monster from your deck to your hand. You banish the fire one, you can search for a fire dragon, water dragon, etc., etc., etc. Now, the one thing, the biggest thing to keep in mind, you can only use 1 effect of each dragon per turn, and only once that turn. So if you've revived a Calderas from your graveyard by banishing 2 other monsters, you will not be able to discard another Calderas from hand with a fire monster to destroy something. If you were to banish a Calderas from your graveyard as one of the 2 that special summons the Calderas to the field, the one that got banished will not be able to get its search effect off because you have already used 1 effect of Blaster Elemental Dragon of Calderas for the turn. So what you really need to do is get the deck moving in a sense where you're using the other attributes to fuel each other. That way you're able to stagger off as many effects as possible. Some of the busted hands that you can have ends up where you're triggering at least 1 effect of every big dragon during the turn for your setup, and it just gets ridiculously nutty at that point. Now, aside from that, every dragon has a mini dragon. The mini dragons all do the exact same thing. You discard themselves plus another dragon or shared attribute monster to special summon the big version of themselves. So, pitch this guy and any other guy to special that guy. Say you pitch a title and a redox, or say a title with burner to get Calderas. and then you wanted to revive a Redox out of your grave. So you specialed it by banishing the title and the burner that you just pitched, and then title got banished. Then you get to search for a water dragon, which usually would be this guy. Then you would pitch this guy with any other dragon to special summon another one of this guy, and then it just goes on and on and on. You have a bunch of level 7s on the board, and you start making all sorts of stupid plays. As for the spells that are standard to the deck, you play 3 Gold Sark. Drop Gold Sark to banish one of the big dragons. The big dragon will trigger and let you search either another copy of itself or a copy of its mini, which allows you to make plays depending on what your hand looks like. And then the deck has some stupid draw power that's a +1 every time. Banish a level 7 monster, draw 2 cards, and then trigger the search effect of the one you banished. So it gets really, really awesome that way. As for the extra deck, the biggest card in the extra deck is Dragosac. This guy, 2 level 7s, detach material, get 2 tokens. If you have tokens, it can't be destroyed by battle or card effect. And once per turn, you can scrap dragon by popping a token. But if you scrap dragon, you can't attack with it that turn. This is definitely the biggest play in the deck. Of the 20-0 that I went today with it, you will go into Dragosac every game. Many games you will go into 2 Dragosacs. And while personally I haven't gone into 3, the option or the possible need to most certainly does exist. So I would highly suggest playing 3 Dragosacs. The next big one is, of course, Big Eye, our newest Giganto money card of the format. Generally speaking, you'll never need more than 1 Big Eye. I did use a second Big Eye once all day. That was in an Insector match. My Big Eye got Veilered. I was trying to steal a Centipede that was equipped with Sword and Gigamantis. He Veilered it. He proceeded to go into Acid Golem and run my Big Eye over. So I made another Big Eye and stole his Acid Golem and beat him to death with it. But other than that, I never used a second Big Eye. I've only used Abyss Gaius once all day. We do have level 7 water, so it is very possible to make him. Generally speaking, in the rare occasion that you would actually have 2 copies of the same elemental dragon on the board at the same time, especially if those 2 happen to be title, chances are good you won't be going into Abyss Gaius, but it's always smart to have the option in case. I also made Gaius Dragon manually once today to run over piercings. He got effect veilered though, so I didn't get to do the piercing damage, but either way, the option's there. The last rank 7, of course, is number 7, Lucky Straight. I did have the option to drop this guy once today also. Well, I've had the opportunity to drop him multiple times. There was only one game that I kind of wanted to do it. I had game anyways. My opponent kind of begged me to go into it just for the awesomeness, but I didn't do it. But on occasion, that I think it's somewhere, let's see, there are 6 out of 36 ways to roll a 7 with 2 dice. So 16%, 16.66. 6 divided by 36. Yeah, 16.66% chance to roll a 7. His effect is multiple times a turn, so if you did that all 3 times, you have a 50% chance to actually roll a 7 during a turn if you were to go into that guy. That being the case, you would have a probably decent-sized beater, and you can like nuke the entire rest of the field without destroying, so you don't get starlighted and whatnot. So the ability that number 7 has in the deck can be very good, but I've never seen the need for it. As for the rest of the extra deck, you can pretty much fill in with whatever. I personally play like 2 rank 4s. I play a Cowboy and an Emerald. I've never made them, but I have level 4s. There's Monster Reborn, just as a maybe. There's room, so you can sort of pick and choose what you want. I do suggest Syncos as well. Throughout the course of the day, between myself sighting into effect failures or having Monster Reborn or Big Eye, a various tuner, I've made Catasters, Gaia Knights, and Scrap Dragon. I also suggest playing like Black Rose and Stardust, all depending on the room you have and whatnot. But you will have the opportunity to make all synchros from level 5 to level 8 on a relatively consistent basis. I'd say, it might happen once a match or maybe once every other match. But if you didn't have the Syncos and the extra, you'd really regret it. I almost lost a match in Game 3 early on in the day, probably the 6th or 7th game that I played, because I wasn't playing Syncros, so I made sure to fix that. As for the last 10 spots in the deck, there's all sorts of stuff you can do. I mean, of course, you're going to have staples. I highly recommend the main 6 being Triple MST, Heavy Storm, Dark Hole, and Monster Reborn, which only leaves you with 4 more spaces in the deck to work with. Various other cards you could play. Volcanic Shell works amazing with Calderas, keeping fire monsters in your hand, helping you deck thin, giving you extra fire monsters to pitch with the mini. That's always a good one. Kokemiru Drago works really great as a wind that you can normal summon to work with the Tempest and Lightning portion of the deck, as well as being able to stun out Chaos Sorcerer and Envoy plays. No Miracle Fusions for your Hero Shining, no Hyperions, no Light Pulsars, none of that type of crap. With Drago, they can't special summon light or dark monsters. So Drago's a very solid pick for the deck also. There are some builds that like to use Dragon Ravine. You can pitch a card to send one of the dragons to bait the graveyard to start making effects happen. I did play 2 copies of Dragon Ravine for a while today. I ended up cutting them. I only ever used the card once out of the 6, maybe 7 matches that I had the 2 copies in the main deck. Yeah, I used the effect once in all of those. And that's only because I totally opened with the nuts with another card I was teching at the time. But it wouldn't do any of us any good at this point for me to go off and just show you the build as I have it now and exactly how I've managed to go 20-0 today. But from this core, which is exactly where I started 13 hours ago, you guys can sort of fill in, play the deck a couple of hands, figure out what you like, what you don't like about it, what type of things you want in the deck, what type of consistency issues you think you can solve, and various ways to do that. And you guys can come up with the way the deck runs best for you. So let me know what you guys think. Comment, rate, subscribe, and I'll talk to you later. Peace out.